This is how the Council of Chalcedon may have been responsible for why 536 AD was the worst year in history, according to historians. The story begins in the year 532 AD. It had been 81 years since Pope Leo of Rome split Christendom in two with his infamous tome at the synod held in the city of Chalcedon, and the Byzantine Emperor Justinian decided to establish dialogues between theologians of both sides of the Chalcedonian schism in order to hash out their arguments and finally settle the matter. According to the expert summary of Dr. Sebastian Brock, the leading scholar on Syriac Christian history and literature, the Miaphysite anti-Chalcedonians, today known as Oriental Orthodox Christians, embarrassed the Diophysite Chalcedonian party, today known as the Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox, on the topic of them reinstating the followers of Nestorius, the antagonist of the Ecumenical Council of Ephesus in 431, thus proving their orthodoxy to the emperor. Yet it still ended sourly, with the Miaphysites being refused an audience with Justinian. But why was this the case? According to Dr. Brock, it was because the Chalcedonians did not keep their promise of preserving the Miaphysite side of the recorded proceedings of the dialogues. So after privately speaking to the emperor, they convinced him to not listen to the Miaphysite side at all. Moving on, one of the attendees in these dialogues was the Chalcedonian bishop Anthimus of Trebizond. Despite being a prominent Chalcedonian theologian, personally selected by the emperor to defend the Chalcedonian side, it seems this loss sowed seeds of doubt in his heart. Anthimus eventually switched sides to the Miaphysite party only 3 years later, in 535 AD, after he was ordained the Patriarch of Constantinople, becoming the first Miaphysite patriarch of the city since the time of St. Agapetus of Constantinople. Saint Severus, the rightful bishop of Antioch, had been exiled in 518 AD and replaced with a false Chalcedonian bishop called Paul the Jew, whose violent assassinations and persecution towards the anti-Chalcedonian side were so awful that even the Chalcedonian emperor Justin deposed him, thus officially schisming by establishing a parallel hierarchy. Yet Saint Severus was still patriarch for the Oriental Orthodox, since he did not initiate the schism as he was not canonically deposed. Ultimately, this means a second altar apart from the true chair of St. Peter at Antioch was set up. St. Severus was also recognized by Justinian as patriarch, even when there was a Chalcedonian patriarch. The amity between the two parties peaked in 535 AD, with St. Theodosius' election in Alexandria gaining Justinian's approval, St. Anthimus being reinstated, and St. Severus agreeing to Justinian's invitation to Constantinople. Reunion talks were happening, and hundreds of Miaphysite ascetics were permitted in Constantinople, and a Miaphysite lobby even began in the city. But out of fear of losing his rank, Ephraim, the Chalcedonian Patriarch of Antioch, warned Pope Agapetus in advance. Despite the earlier sliver of hope, things took a drastic turn when Agapetus arrived in the city in March of 536 AD. This led to the negation of all progress made. Anthimus was deposed without a synod, Theodosius and Severus were deposed without approval of their synods either, contradicting Canon 4 of the Ecumenical Council of Nicaea, which asserts they must. After Anthimus was deposed solely by Pope Agapetus without a synod, Menas of Constantinople was ordained by the Pope single-handedly, again contradicting the canons of Nicaea. This is an early example of papal abuse of power. Even by Roman Catholic standards, the Pope cannot disobey canons which were approved by his predecessors. Pope Leo alludes to this in Letter 104 in explaining why he rejects Chalcedon's Canon 28, saying it contradicts tradition. The first time a synod actually takes place to deal with Saints Anthimus, Severus, and Theodosius is in a series of councils right before the summer of 536 and prior to the winter in May and September. This will be significant later. Pope Agapetus dies on April 22nd before any of these councils take place, surely as God refused to allow him to see the demonic fruition of his plots. The councils and the emperor judged against the righteous patriarchs and excommunicated them. Again, no synodal approval. Now, what is the connection between these events and the year 536 AD being the worst year in history? As historian Dr. Volker Mentz says, The schism became official in 536 AD, and any attempts at reuniting the churches became impossible due to the councils of 536. We see God's wrath following soon after each of these events. Agapetus arrives in Constantinople on March 13th and deposes St. Anthimus, uncanonically replacing him with Menas the fraud. Soon afterwards, in March, the world is immersed in darkness and remains that way for 18 months, an event remarkably similar to what took place during our Lord Jesus Christ's crucifixion. Next, in May, a council is held led by Menas against the Miaphysite Orthodox saints, which excommunicates them. That same summer, we see the beginning of the coldest decade in the past 2,300 years. Likewise, in September, another council called in Jerusalem for the same purpose by the Chalcedonians condemned our saints and confirmed the prior sentence from May. Immediately afterwards, again, they were faced with one of the coldest winters. The entire planet suffered from the Americas to East Asia. The catastrophes don't just end there. The years to follow were full of tragic events. In 541, a plague struck the Byzantine Empire that cursed Justinian by forever being associated with him. The plague of Justinian, as it came to be known, spread both literally as a physical disease and metaphorically as the Chalcedonian faith of Justinian. The empire was duly punished for its impiety of rejecting the Lord who purchased it with his own blood. Lastly, couldn't it have all just been a coincidence? Well, the disasters of 536 being purportedly set off by volcanoes may lead some skeptics to think of that as the more probable explanation. But what's interesting is that historians have been unable to actually discern which volcanic eruption caused it. Many different options have been put forth, yet all have been rejected by one party or another. Ultimately, the volcano thesis remains merely a naturalistic suggestion for those who outright deny the possibility of it being supernatural judgment. To put to scale the significance of this catastrophic year, some scholars speculate that the Scandinavian story of Fimbulwinter, which is the Norse myth of the 3-year-long winter that precedes the apocalypse called Ragnarok, was formed as a sort of cultural memory of the events of 536. Based on all this, was it truly a coincidence or divine retribution? The cause of it is difficult to explain by nature. You decide based on the evidence presented. Nevertheless, the truth of Oriental Orthodoxy subsists in its patristic heritage and theological truth.